Trump and Pence are now viciously going at each other's throats publicly. So I want to show you this little clip here from CNN. Pence gave a speech recently to the Federalist Society. Let's take a look, and then I'll show you Trump's reaction.
Before Pence spoke, some here didn't see a need for Pence to address his decision to certify the vote because they agree Trump lost, period.
Joe Biden won the election, so I don't know what more I can say. I mean, Joe Biden won the election. The role of the vice president in that is very ceremonial. They counted the electoral ballots. The members of Congress voted to certify. Joe Biden won the election.
I don't think he needs to address it. What happened, right, wrong, or indifferent, we lost in 2020.
Do you not want to hear Pence correct the record that Trump is falsely claiming that he could have overturned the election?
I think Pence probably feels, I don't want to speak for Pence, but I think Pence probably feels that the record does not need to be corrected. Otherwise, he would correct it.
Then came the former vice president's speech.
And I heard this week that President Trump said I had the right to overturn the election. But President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. The presidency belongs to the American people and the American people alone.
We went back out to the group after the speech to see how it was received.
I was pleasantly surprised with how he handled it. I thought he did a great job. I think it's time to move on from the 2020 election and look forward to 2024.
I think he's made it clear, the vice president has, that he has a difference of opinion with the president and the president's team over what the duties of the vice president required on January 6th.
Were you happy to hear him address it?
Well, I think he needed to address it. This is a great audience. These are constitutional scholars here, so you're speaking to a very educated group.
I think Mike Pence did the right thing. I think Mike Pence should have done what he felt was right, and it sounds like he did what he felt was right.
How do you think that comment will sit with former President Donald Trump being called wrong?
Probably not well, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what he says.
Part of the problem here is the cuckish, sheepish reaction from these Republican voters. Now, understand something. There's a class divide here. These are Federalist Society members. Federalist Society is dedicated to market deregulation and laissez-faire capitalism and legislating that in an activist way from the bench, from the courts. So these are like Republican elites. And this is the group that Mike Pence appeals more to than Trump does. Trump more appeals to the rank-and-file, far-right GOP base, more poor and working-class people. Pence appeals more to now the wealthier Republican elites. It's not to say Trump doesn't have, elite support. Of course he does. His biggest legislative accomplishment was cutting taxes for the top 1%. 83% of the benefits of that tax cut bill went to the top 1% and to corporations. So his policies support the wealthy, but the wealthy also don't like all of Trump's antics. And so what you saw there is before the speech, all sheepish, like, oh, I don't know if he's going to call him out. He's a gentleman. He's a scholar. I don't know if he would do that. And, almost like a underlying, like, I hope we can all get along type thing. And then afterwards, they're like, I guess I support it kind of. Because they're all afraid of Trump's ire. So Pence was unequivocal there. I did not have the right to overturn the election. Of course, Pence is correct. Correct. He wasn't going to spark a constitutional crisis in an election that fundamentally wasn't that close. It certainly wasn't close enough where there's an open question as to whether or not somebody won. You could argue Bush versus Gore was way closer. When you look at 60 court cases, almost every one Donald Trump lost. Even Republican judges, even Trump-appointed judges were like, bro, there's no evidence here. I don't know what you're talking about. The Arizona audit, which found that Biden won by even more than we thought he won on Election Day. It's obvious. It's clear if you're willing to be objective about it and you put your fifis aside. So Pence is right about that. Well, Donald Trump doesn't like it. Let me show you his response and throw it up on screen here. Statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States of America. Just saw Mike Pence's statement on the fact that he had no right to do anything with respect to the electoral vote count, other than being an automatic conveyor belt for the old crow Mitch McConnell to get Biden elected president as quickly as possible. Well, the vice president position is not an automatic conveyor belt. Hold on, let me pull this up a little more. It's kind of small. And not an automatic conveyor. If obvious signs of voter fraud or irregularities exist. That's why the Democrats and rhinos are working feverishly together to change the very law that Mike Pence and his unwitting advisors used on January 6th to say he had no choice. The reason they wanted to change is because they now say they don't want the vice president to have the right to ensure an honest vote. In other words, I was right and everyone knows it. If there is fraud or large-scale irregularities, it would have been appropriate to send those votes back to the legislatures to figure it out. The Dems and rhinos want to take that right away. A great opportunity lost, but not forever. In the meantime, our country is going to hell. So what Trump is referring to there is now Congress is moving to remove any doubt and make sure it is not debatable. So they want to move to say, of course, the vice president can't overturn the election. Now, that's already the case. But the fact that so many on the far right are genuinely insane about that question, they just want to codify it on another level to ensure, no, for real, it literally says it word for word right here. And Trump, of course, this is the hallmark of a conspiracy theory. He takes evidence against his position and spins it as if it's for his position. Oh, why would you need to add that law if it was already the case that the vice president can't overturn the election? The only reason why they're adding it is because you are psychotic with everything you've been saying over the past year. And Trump has gone further and further down that rabbit hole. There were a number of reports that came out. They had literal memos that were ready to go about seizing the voting machines. There was a memo about like doing a coup, and here are the things that we could say we're doing it for, declaring martial law. All this stuff came out. And again, since Trump has been out of office, he's gone further and further down this rabbit hole, and he's gotten closer and closer to the my pillow guy position of like, it's all fake, it's all totally rigged, and therefore, almost anything that's done in response to that is righting a wrong, is justice. I mean, that's the language he's using. The language is like, look, there was fraud, there were irregularities, we were screwed in the process, it's not fair, so we need to bring about justice, and by any means necessary, that means if I need to do an authoritarian takeover of the country, I'm doing the authoritarianism in defense of democracy. No, you're not. No, you're not. And of course, he never brings up the point. 60 court cases, I lost almost every one of them. Arizona audit, I lost by more votes than before. And by the way, this is a huge problem because he still has the heart of the base. And look at the reactions from the Republicans who aren't with him. Now, Liz Cheney and Kinzinger try to lead the charge against Trump on this front. This is the one issue where Liz Cheney and Kinzinger are correct. In every other way, they're super far right and insane, supporting every single war, supporting all the deregulation of the marketplace and tax cuts for the rich and all that stuff. But outside of those two, nobody else says it. And even Mike Pence, trying to correct the record there, was like, President Trump is wrong. If you just say he's wrong and you don't give reasons that are crystal clear as to why he's wrong, you're not really engaging in the fight. So you're trying to fight Trump, who's already more popular than you, with two hands tied behind your back. Who do you think's going to win that fight? In the hearts and minds of the Republican base. Now, maybe it's a fool's errand, and maybe it's impossible to beat him in that argument, even though you got all the facts on your side. That's possible. But that doesn't mean, as a matter of principle, you shouldn't engage in it and get on the record and be clear. Because even if you only sway 10% of the people who are currently on his side, well, for the love of God, that's a big difference, and that's really important. So it's bad, man. It's bad. I mean, this guy, and they're trying to, we'll get to a story on this later, they're literally purging the party of all the people who don't believe in what's called the big lie, the idea that Trump won. That's insane. Chris Hedges said it best. At this point, the people who are still diehard Trump defenders, they're functionally a cult. They act like a cult. And I don't see any counter-argument to that at this point. Yes, early on in 2016 with his campaign, with all of his fake populism and how he was able to beat Hillary, the people who supported him then, no, there were some way more reasonable people at the time. It's not like all the Trump supporters were deplorables and racists early on. But if you're still with him after everything, after he governed like an establishment tool, and you're still with him today, even though not only did he govern like an establishment tool, he's open about the fact like, yeah, I should have overthrown the election and become a dictator. Well, that is a cult. And you are in a cult. And you have no principles beyond, I just like this guy and the way he makes me feel. So, no bueno. I'm happy Pence said that, but he should have been more aggressive in it. And I expect them to now keep going at it harder and harder. But it just stinks of the same thing that we saw in 2016 in the sense that the Republican establishment and the elites tried to line up against Trump, and Trump still was able to beat them. And it's because he uses that bully pulpit and because he's aggressive with it. And the counter-arguments just don't land as well, especially to his base. So buckle up, because it's going to be a wild ride. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.